Hi everyone, it's good to be here. This is my first time in Serbia. Actually, I lie, I have been here once before doing some consultancy for a Scandinavian airline, but unfortunately, because of the work I was doing, I never actually left the airport. Actually, I never actually arrived in the airport in the first place. I just stayed on the aircraft and went straight back to Scandinavia. So it's lovely to be here. It's lovely to see so many of you. As it was mentioned, I'm Ričarda Maslena. I'm head of analysis at CAPA, which is an Australian company that's owned now by Informa, a massive event business. I've been invited to make a quick presentation about the outlook of the industry, give you a quick overview of where we are. So over the next 20 minutes, I'm going to give you a few numbers and give a few insights into what we believe is happening in commercial aviation right now. So here's a few of the things. So over the first 15 minutes, I'm going to give you 15 numbers. You don't need to remember all these. This presentation will be available to you. I will make it available to the organisers. So you'll get 15 numbers, and then over another 5 minutes, we'll try and discuss about what we see at CAPA Centre for Aviation about the future of commercial aviation. So two of the most important numbers right now for aviation are 26 and 0. We have a countdown now to ICAO's 2050 goal for net zero carbon emissions in commercial aviation. It's an ambitious goal. Some people believe it's achievable. Others say it may be a bit too far ahead of us. We're making big progress. It's quite clear sustainable aviation fuels will be a key driver and a key part of this, but we need to do a lot more as an industry to be able to achieve this. This underlines everything we now do in commercial aviation. We have a green outlook on everything that's happening, and that is a major, major impact on any investment we now have in commercial aviation. So we talk a lot about looking back. It's been an incredible 5 years. It's been so troublesome for everybody. COVID hit us with such a shock. That the industry was down on its knees. So we keep looking back to 2019. 2019 was the baseline for the industry. It remains that baseline of where traffic was, where capacity was before COVID struck. So as you'll see from this is fleets, and in terms of jet aircraft in service from the CAPA fleet database. Looking back at February 2019 and February 2024, what we see now is there's 105%, you see in the numbers, 105% jet aircraft in service, which means we've got more jets flying now than we had before the pandemic. We're seeing a change in the industry. There's quite clearly, as you can see on the numbers on the side, full service carriers, the traditional airlines, they're just about the same level as they were before the pandemic. Low-cost carriers are up an extra fifth. So we're seeing a lot more growth in low-cost airlines, and they have been driving this recovery from COVID to where we are today. Now, looking at seat capacity, again, it's 105%. This is based on data up until the end of the first quarter. You may be able to see from the lines, I don't know how clear it is, you can see how from a global perspective we've had a very geographical shifts in the recovery process. Europe initially was hit really strongly by the pandemic. You can see numbers fell down to 25% of capacity levels seen before the pandemic. Asia stayed fairly high at that time because of the huge domestic markets that they have there. And then the recovery was initially driven by Africa, Latin America, and now we're all pretty much getting to a similar period at the end. But noticeably, you'll see Asia Pacific is capacity levels are still down on pre-pandemic levels. That will recover very quickly. That has been a lot of growth. Mainly that's been driven by China having very restrictive practices and limiting international flights for such a long time. And Europe is down the lowest after having a fairly strong recovery. The numbers are sort of leveled off now, and we're seeing that they're at 95%. I think this summer we will see some change, and we'll see in a few slides as we come to it in a moment, that From a global perspective, 2024 now will be the new baseline. We can forget 2020, 21, 22, 23 as anomalies on a longer term scale of things. 2024 will be this new baseline that we can start to now look at in terms of moving forward. So as I say, is this a return to the long-term growth? Well, yeah, I think it is. This is looking at revenue passenger kilometres, which is a measure that we use that's based on traffic levels over distance. What this quite clearly shows is how big an effect COVID had on international and even domestic travel. Looking at the dip in 2020, we're back to numbers that we'd not seen in this century. We were looking back to the late 1990s. That's a lot of lost traffic over time. So looking at it from a traffic point of view, obviously the others were based on capacity. Traffic numbers take a bit longer to get to us. It's a little bit harder to get the measures. This is from our friends at IATA, who are the source for all this information. So in January 2024, passenger levels were 99.6%. I could have put 100. It's not a full recovery. It's almost there. February's numbers we have now, but it's very difficult to actually use them because obviously this year was a leap year, so we had 29 days versus 28 last year. So obviously the numbers would look a lot better than previous year's performances. So we've been a bit careful with that. But once we get into the March data, which we should get in the next few weeks, we'll start to realise exactly where we are in the progress here. So as I mentioned, low-cost airlines, they're significant in this region. Quite clearly, you see a lot of the growth has been driven recently by low-cost carriers. They now account for exactly a third of all seats across the world, which is significant given the growth that the industries have. Just ignore the title on this. The title's wrong on this one. We'll get it corrected before we send it to you. So this is looking at aircraft deliveries from Airbus and Boeing, the two biggest providers of aircraft. And what we see here is, it follows a cycle of ups and downs, but we were seeing in the 2010s a significant growth in aircraft deliveries. And then obviously once COVID hit, we've seen that just fall significantly. So last year, Airbus and Boeing delivered 1,263 aircraft, which is about the same level that they delivered back in 2013. So effectively, we have lost as an industry 10 years of new aircraft deliveries. Looking at them separately, Boeing's level is back to about 2011, 2012. Airbus's is just back to 2017. Looking ahead for this year, for 2024, we've got numbers from Airbus. Airbus have given projections for how many aircraft they expect to deliver this year. Boeing, not so much so. Boeing are having a lot of troubles at the moment, are well publicised, which hopefully they're working towards finding a resolution to. But even then, the numbers that are being suggested, and based on our own estimates, it's still only looking about the levels that we saw in 2015 and 2016. So for a growing industry, there's a real restriction on the number of aircraft that will be available. And I think airlines particularly are finding it very difficult right now to be able to source new aircraft and get their own aircraft for growth because of this. So right now, in terms of the number of aircraft on order, there's 13 years worth of aircraft. So, there's little gaps in the schedule and everywhere. But if you want to order an aircraft, as if you went to a manufacturer today and said, I want to buy one plane, you might be waiting 13 years for that to arrive. Now, obviously, there's pathways you can go to source aircraft. But it just shows that there's a lot out there. And these aircraft will be used to replace existing planes, but also will be used to push the growth of the industry over the next couple of decades. So right now, leasing accounts for 53% of the aircraft that are currently in service. It's a key financial way of sourcing aircraft when work with lessors to be able to do that, particularly the low-cost industry, which they will buy aircraft directly themselves, big scale of 200, 300 aircraft, and then do sale and leasebacks to lessors to actually finance them. So it's a key part of the industry moving forward still. So it's great to hear the announcement earlier on. Training and labour is a major issue moving forward. Now, this is based on a talent forecast from CAE last summer, and basically to meet the targets of what is required for new pilots, we're going to need a 4.1% growth annually to 2032 to meet the needs of the industry. Now, on a global scale, it's quite hard to actually get the numbers of how many pilots are being trained and everything else. But looking at the US, where that data is quite readily available, over the 10 years to 2022, that annual growth in pilot training was 1.4%. So you can see there's a massive gap there. So here in the announcement just before this presentation about more training facilities and having training facilities here in Serbia, that's a massive growth move forward, and, you know, well done to everybody that was involved in that. So one of the biggest impacts for airlines is fuel. One of the biggest impacts for all of you if you're travelling as well is fuel, because the cost of it is always carried over to the passengers in the price that you're paying for airfares. So fuel right now is at about a 29% cost to revenue. It's been a strange period with fuel, because there's we looked and it was at a fairly reasonable position before COVID hit, but we were looking at 20 to 22% roughly. But it's then been a bit of a spike, and a bit of what's happened is airlines have had to really take the burden on in a time when they're under a lot of pressures with loss of traffic and huge costs themselves. So it's caused a real challenge for the industry. So as an industry, aviation is seen as quite a sexy industry. Everyone wants to be involved in it. It's not a business to go in to make money. And we've all heard Sir Richard Branson's famous quote of to run an airline, you start with £1 billion and you'll end up with £1 million. It is not a profitable business for so many. You may look here and see, well, $25.7 billion profit this year for the industry. Sounds amazing. Sounds an incredible figure. As you'll see in the next couple of slides, that's not quite the case. But I think what this slide shows quite significantly, and what's clear to see, is the impact that COVID had on airline profitability. So literally, that dip there is something that's been completely unprecedented before, and it's something that's going to leave a lot of issues for the industry as it ramps up still moving forward. So as I said, 25.7 billion sounds great. But when we're looking at return on investment as a business, the actual profitability of airlines remains below what is the weighted average cost of capital. So that's the return, the returns that investors are expecting in the industry. So we're profitable. Some airlines are profitable, others more than others, some more than others. But as a return, we are not making a lot of return. I think, information that's put out by some other people is it's enough to make a cup of coffee. That's effectively the average return that you get per passenger. So when we look at the actual return on investment, even in the profitable years, now 2012 to 2019 was one of the most profitable periods ever for the airline industry. Even then, the average economic loss against investment would be put at £18 billion per annum. It just shows what a challenge it is as an industry to be making money. And this brings us on to a few things that I'd like to highlight at the end of the presentation. But before I get to that, I just want to do a quick little fly around the region here with some data from the CAPA website. So it's the Slovenian market, the smallest market here in the region. As you can see, it's only hit 2/3 of the capacity it had before COVID. A lot of reasons for that is because of the collapse of Adria Airways at the end of September. As you see the top line, the capacity levels fell significantly. Numbers are still going to be down for this year, so it's a challenging year in a market that's dominated by full-service airlines. Bosnia-Herzegovina, recovery, good strong recovery, 2022, 2023, and this year is going to follow a similar trend as we see it, really based on foreign airlines that are flying in the market with low-cost share significantly higher than the global average. In North Macedonia, again, we're looking what's been a strong start to this year. It was a very good first quarter, but the summer period's going to be slightly below the levels that were seen last year. Again, it's a market heavily dominated by foreign low-cost carriers. Montenegro is quite a seasonal market, as we can see by the green dotted line. It's looking like this year will be another stronger year and continue the recovery process. Just looking at Pristina on its own, how it's collected in the CAPA database, shows another year of strong growth last year will carry on this year. So here, Serbia, we now get into the top 100 countries in the world, number 80, based on current capacity levels. You know, what we see was an amazing recovery last year. That yellow line, significant growth, heavily driven by the national carrier here, Air Serbia, which had a tremendous year last year. And obviously I will be speaking to Yuri a little bit later on, and we'll discuss what has happened and why that is the case. But again, it looks like it'll be another strong year for aviation in the country. Croatia, massive seasonal market, and what we see here is that 2024 will be another very strong year, which is very encouraging for all the airlines and the aviation marketplace there in the industry. Just looking wider, further afield, Bulgaria, it's a larger market, but again, it's one that struggled to get back to where it was before COVID. A lot of low-cost airlines there now that are pushing the market a little bit further up, but it's a challenging time for them. Then we go to another extreme. Albania is going to be one of the fastest growing country markets in the world. Last year was a great performance. This year, that green line of predicted schedules into the summer, you know, that's an amazing growth. It was 218% last year. It's going to be similar for this year. So it's amazing to see whether it can sustain that demand. We will see whether we'll see those levels fall down again. But that's really encouraging. And again, it shows the value of low-cost airlines. You see there the biggest airlines there. This is based on this week's schedules. Wizz Air Malta, Ryanair UK, Wizz Air UK. The two airlines that are really pushing that market. Romania. Again, healthy growth following what we perhaps would say is what we would normally expect to see. And Greece, again, a seasonal market that each year is showing a small sustainable growth, which again is expected within the industry. It's a nice curve to have. So looking ahead, what do we see? Okay, first quarter's been good. Second quarter of this year, as we've just moved into, we will see aviation in Europe return across the whole of the continent back to pre-COVID levels. We expect to reach 100.7%, up from 94.7% in the first quarter. So that's really encouraging, especially intercontinental capacity, which has grown a lot slower than the regional capacity. Only Europe to Asia will still be below 100% capacity, and intra-Europe will be roughly at the capacity level. As I've highlighted, within Europe, the recovery has been led by low-cost airlines. We'll see that more. They've emerged from COVID in a much stronger form and much quicker than full-service carriers that have had to do a bit more restructuring. And operators have benefited from growth in airfares. Airfares have gone up quite considerably over the last couple of years. If any of you have tried to book a holiday, you would have seen the cost of travel has gone up. May not be great for you, but from the industry point of view, it's much needed, and we'll come on to that in a little moment. Airfare inflation is down slightly from those peaks we saw post-COVID, but we're seeing a renewed pressure on that. So further improvements in capacity and demand, positive growth in fares, and increased LCC seat share seem likely to continue into the northern summer is our viewpoint. So what's the industry challenge? Well, before I get on to that, here's just a recap of those numbers. I said I'd give you 15. I think you've got 17 there, so I've been extra generous with a bit more for you there. So what does it mean? So we've highlighted that there's a low return on the invested capital in aviation. That indicates that we have too much competition. While it's great to have lots of low-cost airlines that have opened up the market to more people, it's actually put even more pressure on the industry to survive. It's a challenge for full-service carriers to adapt, but also for everybody to be able to sustain themselves in the market. Has there been some consolidation? Well, yes. You know, the data here that we have highlights that the number of airline groups across the world has actually decreased by around a fifth since 2019 through airline failures, but mainly more through mergers and acquisitions. And this is happening in all parts of the world, as we can see. But it's not enough to drive up the returns. You know, we've seen we're still not making enough money. So, what are the challenges? What issues do we have there? Well, not all businesses are there to make money. There's some governments around the world that run airlines purely as loss leaders to support wider economic gains within the countries. So you can understand that. We also have hobbyists and brand builders, as we define them, who are people that are basically running an airline to support other initiatives, maybe support wider businesses, tourism businesses, things like that. So that puts more pressure on those airlines that are trying to make money. I think it's the issue that we see is barriers to entry to the market are low, but barriers to exit are high. Now, aviation is highly regulated. You can't just set up an airline and fly. The regulations are so strong, and quite rightly, but as an industry, and given the contacts I have after 20 years, I could probably start an airline tomorrow. I wouldn't fly my own planes. I would have someone else flying them for me. I'm not going to make money because I've not had time to sell the tickets. But I could get an airline up and running. And that's the issue there. It is easy, actually, despite significant regulations, despite labour issues, despite various of the things we've highlighted, it's still easy to start an airline. So I'm from Newcastle in the UK, so I could start a flight from Belgrade to Newcastle if I wanted. I'm not going to make money, but I can do it. But the barriers to exit are actually quite high. It seems silly to say, if you don't make money, you're going to go out of the industry. It's not as simple as that. There's a lot of government support for airlines that maybe shouldn't be as strong as is being offered. Maybe things should be operated more on a level playing field. We have bankruptcy protection, particularly the US market. A lot of those airlines, as soon as they face any problems, straight away there's bankruptcy protection procedures that protect them to restructure and enable them to carry on. We have a lot of obstacles to mergers. It may make a lot of sense for two airlines to join forces together. Can't always happen because of restrictions we have. Competition authorities in the US have stopped a lot of airline mergers recently. And then we have foreign ownership limits as well, which stop one country perhaps investing in another airline to support them. So I'm just running out of time here, so just a quick run through these last slides. Airlines are in transition at the moment, massive amount happening. The green evolution is significant and costly and is something that all airlines are focused upon. We have to make massive investments as an industry in infrastructure, in airports, ATC, runways, surface access to airports, new labour, even purchasing aircraft, which don't come cheap. And then we have digitalisation. It's happening in all industries, and aviation has to adapt to move these processes forward, adopting AI and various other forms. So that's an important step forward. All these require massive investment, but as I've highlighted, the low return on capital in aviation and highly competitive market means those investors may not want to invest in aviation, and that's a challenge that the industry has to overcome. So governments must find ways to lower barriers to exit, to allow consolidation and allow the industry to make higher returns. As a result, not great for you all who want to travel anywhere, airfares need to go up more, and we need to be paying more to travel. Whether that's a return to the old days when flying was seen as something that was quite restrictive to only a certain level of people, I hope not, but it does need to get to a higher level now. And we need to start debating that. We need to start talking about it. It's not a great topic. We don't want to be highlighting having to pay more to fly, but it's something that needs to be done for the future and sustainability of the business. So just quickly at the end, you may have seen at the bottom of the slides a little QR code, a little graphic. We're pleased to say that CAPA will be bringing its Airline Leader Summit Awards and Worlds of Excellence to Belgrade in November. We're really looking forward to working with Air Serbia and everybody here in the country to make it a great event and bring a significant number of airline leaders into the country. If you're interested in knowing more, please scan the QR code. If not, find me over the next couple of days and I can give you more information and share some codes that maybe we can arrange some special deals for you to attend. So that's it from me. Thank you for your time. Much appreciate it. I'm not sure if we want to open the floor to some questions.
We are already running out of time.
No problem at all. Well, I'm about over the next couple of days, so if anyone's got anything to ask, please do come and find me. Cheers. Thank you.